So the three presentations that we had before our coffee break, we started off in gender, then moved into a presentation that addressed issues of gender and youth, and then the last one focused more on youth. Let's turn that off so we don't get feedback. So I might just start off by asking a question of each of our panellists, and if you can answer fairly briefly, and while I'm doing that, I want the audience to be thinking about some questions. One of the topics that cuts across all of the three presentations was the issue of social norms, and we can uncover the issues and diagnose the problems in understanding the impediments that social norms provide, or in terms of constraints on uptake of new technologies or getting women or youth involved. But the question is, how do you start influencing those social norms when they're deeply culturally embedded? And in some cases, it may be inappropriate to do so. So I'd just be interested in some thoughts on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. So I think that one of the main ways to challenge these harmful norms is to involve men. And I think this came out in my presentation in a way that is not threatening for them. So making sure that they're also benefiting from the project that you're involved in, I think will make a change, will make it much easier for women to transgress certain norms when there's benefit that men can see, and they're also benefiting at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Mastewal, did you want to add something?
Yes. Addressing constraining gender norms is very critical. And one of the ways is promoting the use of male engagement approach, and also community dialogues and conversations. And also there are several other gender transformative approaches that can be implemented. But working with men and youth is very central, and changing the mindset from young age would help in addressing some of the constraining gender norms.
Okay, thanks. Jules, you have nothing on that one. Did anyone want to... I'll open the floor up now for some questions. Our esteemed Director General.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to all three panelists. Really very interesting. I've learned a lot from each and every one of you. On the question of norms, I was just discussing with Dina during the presentation. Norms is not static. And when we look, let's say 15, 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, compared to where we are today, the impact of education on girls and the youth in general, especially women, has had a transformational impact on the current norms we see across different levels of society. Now, in this particular case, farmers, will always be a time lag between because the influence of education, even when the education is received, is still fairly low and limited, and possibly not so much globalized compared to many of the women. For example, if you take the MENA region, the Arab world, where many of the young girls have been going to school as part of an institutionalized process to build capacity, most of these young girls and women come back and take very prominent positions in government and institutions, and they start to change the situation. So my comment here is just to make sure that when we speak about norms, we are not locked in the past, but also consider how the evolution process is, and then how we can actually benefit from the women leaders like we have today in actually bringing the transformation within their own area of authority, because now we have many of them in charge. That's a comment I would want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We've got some questions down the front here.
Thank you. I have a question for each of them. Shall I ask questions?
Just get close to the microphone.
I have a question for each of them. Shall I ask all questions one by one, or?
Go for it.
I I start with Ms. Dina Najjar's presentation. Conclusion of your presentation is, men are men. I mean, this is what the message I got. But I think in the whole methodology, you did not mention, maybe you missed it, the extension agents, were they males or females? Because that matters a lot in the participation of females in the training. That was not clear. That would have changed the scenario of participation of females. That's for you. And for Gildas, I think I would congratulate you for your opening a new viscas of looking at which, and linking with the policy recommendations on the, what you call the informal institutions, agribusiness friendly, with high kind of ordinates for lack of corruption and all. So what I really want to know is, which are the informal institutions you are referring to? That was probably not very clear, but conceptually, I think you did a very good job to, maybe it was too much to make a presentation.
Actually, we might just stop there and get the first two responses before we all forget the questions, then I'll come back. Dina.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think I showed in one of my photos the women extension agents. There were like 5 women, and the 2 women on the sides were the women extension agents. There were women extension agents involved. I just want to make a comment on the norms. I would like to say that, yes, norms are changing, and we are seeing feminization of agriculture, especially in the MENA region, where it is largely impacted by climate change. We see more and more women are getting more responsibilities in agriculture because men and youth are not being involved. They're not necessarily leaving, but it's not as productive as before, not as lucrative. So we see this trend. Indeed, norms are changing, and we are seeing women becoming more and more involved in different spheres. But I also like to say that some norms are sticky, and one of them is land rights. We have seen increase in education. We have seen large gains in many other fields, healthcare, health access. But we did not see changes in land rights. They are still very low, especially in this region. So yeah, I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay, Gildas, over to you on informal institutions.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you for your question. If I understand it very well, you want to know how we capture the notion of informal institution in this paper. So, as I have said in my presentation, informal institutions are not written. It is something that is rooted in belief and culture. You see, so it is elusive and it's sometimes difficult to measure. So to measure that concept in our paper, we use 4 key attributes that are trust, the level of trust, and the control, the extent to which the youth has control over themselves. Because control is a kind of philosophical concept. It's measured if the youth is essentialist or existentialist. Because if it is, for instance, existentialist, this means that they are more likely to work on their life, to change their life, and to reach to set a goal for their life and to reach that goal. But if they are essentialists, this means that they believe in kind of destiny. You see, so we capture informal institutions. We use also the variable called control to capture these attributes. And then we use a third variable, that is the extent to which women participation as well as youth participation into the agribusiness is accepted within society. So we ask the youth whether youth and women participation is socially accepted in their vicinity. So we use Likert approach to capture that information. And finally, we use a 4th attribute, which is obedience. So we in society where obedience is valued enough, people do not have enough control over themselves. You know, they just respect people sometimes mechanically. So we capture informal institutions by these 4 key attributes because we believe that, and it has been researched a lot in the literature, that these attributes are affected by informal institutions, and they are rooted in culture and belief, etc., etc. So thank you. Yes, I know that informal institutions are related to culture, are related to some practice socially accepted but not written within the society. But yes, based on the literature, we capture informal institutions by these key 4 attributes. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Gildas. And just before we go to your last question, we'll go over to one more. But okay. I did get a message which I failed to pass on. We heard about that at the start in Dina's talk. If you could put your phones on silent. There's some dinging down the back, I think. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Hildegard Lingnau from Global Forum on Agricultural Research and Innovation. I'm interested in how to make best use of the research results in order to use research for impact, for development. So I wanted to ask the same question to you, which my colleague already asked. So let me ask 2 questions to the 2 ladies, if I may. To start with the last presentation. So you are asking for a dedicated strategy for youth inclusion. What would be the main elements you could think of? Is it what we heard in the previous presentation, like access to knowledge, access to land? You mentioned that as well, but not so much access to finance. I was surprised to hear that, but I would be happy to hear from whether you have any evidence or any ideas on that. And to the first presentation, thank you so much also for clarifying on the norms. But the answer you give is, I heard you said men should not be threatened, right? They should not be in an uncomfortable place, and you said you already pointed to how to avoid that, so to make them participate both genders, male and female. But it does not, even that does not always work well. I've seen this in other Arab countries where we have been trying it, and even if you treat them equally, it will not necessarily be acceptable for men and their status. So my question is then, is there any idea you could have how to avoid that? I mean, I saw you had some quotations from men as well, which were telling the same. Any idea what could be done about that? Thank you very much.
Okay. Maybe Mastewal first and then Dina.
Thank you. Yes, the strategy to have youth inclusion, to make use of the best use of research and innovation products, processes and services will be basically considering the youth unemployment challenge in Africa, developing mechanisms to use those products of research and innovation to converting that into employment and entrepreneurship opportunities and possibilities. I think that would be the best way to use the results. Thank you.
Dina.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I have 2 answers. The first one is, how do we use our research findings for making a difference? I didn't mention that in the presentation, but one of the things that happened in the project, even though it was a gender project, the text messages that were going out were starting with "Dear Brother Farmer." So we discovered that quite late, because the RCT is very, you cannot change as you go. So what we did is the following action research, is we started in the pandemic, digital interventions, where we moved "Dear Brother Farmer." We added to it "Dear Sister Farmer," something like that. We used local language. And we also corrected some of the mistakes that we found in the first time. So I think it's really important to learn as we go and, like you say, to apply that in whatever capacity we have. So for the how do you do that? I don't have an answer. I think the DG mentioned in his presentation that it will take 142 years to reach gender equality in the region? I think the answer is time and to keep trying to experiment and not do the same thing, but maybe try different things and learning as we go. I hope this answers your question. Okay.
Thank you. Filippo.
You have a question here?
Oh, there's one. Sorry, one over here before Filippo. You've been gazumped.
Yes, thank you very much, presenters. Mine is just a commendation to say that honestly there is hope. It seems as if it is a hopeless situation where we have to bring, our female folk into agriculture. But with what they have presented, I think we are on the road to getting there once we are able to adopt some of their findings. However, I don't know if you are finding, from the result of your finding, will be able to predict, when the end will come, when we are actually going to achieve that equality. From your findings, not from the statement of the DG. Thank you.
We'll come back to you, Ferdinand, after. So, is someone going to respond to that, or is that?
Yeah, I think for the region here in MENA, I think really very important issue to validate women in their roles as farmers. Yeah, so really acknowledging that I think is really important. And this will address many issues, including access to land, credit, information, and so on. So really validating women in their roles as farmers. For example, I've seen in Tunisia, in Egypt, women doing irrigation and agriculture. The training that is aimed at them is for domestic, using water in the domestic sphere. So really validating them in their roles, I think, is very important, and this will address many issues. That's what I wanted to say. I can't predict. I'm not those of people in modeling, but I don't know how the numbers were made. I agree with you. I'm not sure how the numbers were made, but that's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Filippo. And then I think there's one down the front with Fetian.
Thank you very much, Filippo Bassi, ICARDA. Thank you for your presentations. 7, 8, 9 years ago, I don't remember, we were doing CRP extension in phase 2, and a bunch of breeders were sitting in a room, tried to put a gender component to our CRP work, right? And we all agreed, varieties, no gender whatsoever. Varieties are just variety. Come on, this is a seed. What are women and men gonna look differently this seed? Fast forward to today, Dina, you have told me that variety do have a gender component, right? And there's a big difference. So that raises two questions. One, on your presentation, whether or not the variety that was presented was a variety that maybe men or women preferred. And the second question is, are you gonna teach me how variety have a youth effect in 5 to 7 years from now? Is it gonna be the gender person? Is it gonna be a youth specialist that's gonna do that? So if you can comment those two.
Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Filippo. Thanks for all my colleagues that are here. I'm really impressed. Thank you so much. It just really shows your dedication for gender research, and it's been great working with all of you. So the variety kunuz, is it gender responsive? Are the traits gender responsive? Yeah, I'm not sure, but I would say that the naked barley variety would be really useful for women, because a lot of the threshing that they do is manual. And as we know from Miguel's work, that you lose a lot of yield in the threshing process. So I think the naked variety would be really useful for these women. I've also seen that in Morocco, where they roast barley and eat it roasted. I think also they can benefit from these naked varieties. Does it taste good? Is the color okay? I'm not sure. I think we need to test that and see. Am I going to tell you about youth within 5, 7 years? I really hope so. I feel there's a lot of pressure on doing more youth research, especially in our region, where I was talking with the DG this morning, that we have a lot of problems in youth being unemployed and going in bad directions. So I really hope I could contribute to that more. I think it has to do with funding. But I really want to stress out that we cannot also homogenize youth. They're also men and women, and they have different needs. Just like we cannot homogenize gender. And I do think youth is also about gender and the way that men and women have different issues, different needs. But yeah, I look forward to working with you more on youth and other topics. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll finish up. We've got about 5 minutes left. We're Fetian, and then I just wanted to get something.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I have one question, and also additional point with your response. It's possible to have a decision, a variety based on gender-based preferred trends. For example, I myself released a variety which is preferred by women and handpicked by women, but agronomically also superior, which agrees also with the male preferences, because male always give priority for high yielding, but the women also for reducing workload. So the issue is how to bring a balance between those preferences, and also joint discussion with the household is very important. And we include also women preferred traits in the analysis. So it's possible to bring a gender preferred variety. It's not only necked barley. A covered barley can be also has a very big impact. So this is I want to share my experience, but the question I have is from my experience and my observation in your presentation, inter-household studies made on gender basis also bring some emotional issues. It can create also conflict within the household, like what you mentioned. Even it can lead to divorce. So some statements can happen, are we killing the households? If not, what happened if our intervention brings an intended impact on creating instead of stable households? So don't you think household-based intervention is important so that you work with agronomists also together to make decisions on that instead of, I mean, gender issue is not encouraging only women. Gender issue is empowering the woman. So do you have a strategy to already such in an intended effects, creating conflicts among the husband and the wife? Thank you.
And a fairly quick response, please, Dina.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the many questions you mentioned. Of course, it's not only naked barley, it can be different traits that are responsive to women. I don't know the answer on how to choose which traits, how to prioritize traits, but what I can think of is that we need to look at the impact of that trait. So for example, if all the women in this community or in that country are threshing barley manually, I would say that this trait will have a large impact. So depending on the impact of that trait, monetary or well-being impacts, I think we should go for those that have higher impact. I think, because I'm a gender scientist, we need to prioritize the ones that are beneficial to women because they've been marginalized from discussions, benefits for a very long time. I'm not saying I want to be harmful. I want to harm, it's not the same. Are we killing the households? I think that if woman is not in a good relationship and she has access to land, then she can leave and get a divorce. I don't see that as a problem that she now has land rights. I think it's part of being empowered to end the relationship that is not working for you. But are we creating more conflict with our interventions? Yeah, I guess that can be true, but we are trying not to do that. We don't research that per se, and maybe this is something we need to research more, is this conflict issue. Is there any other question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful
I'll
questions.
close you off there, but I'm just going to finish up with a quick response. I want a quick response from all the panel members here, because across all three talks, access to agricultural knowledge was a key factor in promoting or allowing adoption, whether it's barley or youth participation. So what's needed, has your research come up with ways or the approaches needed to access that agricultural knowledge? Is it simply scaling up extension services, leaving aside constraints such as social norms? What's needed there to accelerate that access to agricultural knowledge? And you've got about 30 seconds each. I think we'll start at the other end. Yep.
Thank you. I think access to agricultural knowledge is important for men, women, and youth, and because the way they access information is very different, and addressing some of the barriers would help, especially women and youth, to have equality, and also somehow as a way of also like integrating their input into the knowledge system. Yes, and especially for women, the women are limited by mobility in most of rural communities in Africa. Women don't go to trainings and other venues where major decisions are made on regarding the agricultural inputs, credits, and other issues. So access to agricultural knowledge, making it accessible, and also having that flexible and tailored approach to reach women, men, and youth in the way they can benefit better is important. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mastewal. Gildas, a rapid response.
Yes, thank you for your question. If I understand it very well, you want to know how to implement that policy, in terms of providing youth with agricultural skill, right? Is that your question?
With agricultural knowledge, yeah.
Agricultural knowledge.
How do you accelerate that? Yeah.
Yes. From my finding, one of the key findings, beside informal institution and access to land, is that access to agricultural skills are really critical for youth to participate into the agribusiness sectors. So that means that even though youth have the willingness to do that, they may not do so because they do not have access to this kind of skill. So a better way to do that is to train them. And I make that recommendation in terms of capacity development. This can be done a number of ways. The first way to do that is to institute, let's say, to insert agricultural training. Training based on agricultural capacity and into how to say it. When they are going to school, it is important to teach them how to do agribusiness. I don't know how to say that directly in the proper way. And also, those who are not going to school and they have finished their study, it's important to make some training, particularly for them to transmit that skill to them.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
Thank you, Gildas. And Dina, very quickly.
Okay. So I think that also based on our findings is that you need to target women. If you did a training and hope that they will show up, they're showing up, but in very small numbers. And I also think that training women on masculine-related tasks, because they are doing that anyways, like irrigation, rangeland management, is also really needed. And I also think the other way around. Like Indonesia, we had some men saying they would like to be trained on cheese making. Why not? Also train men on, whatever topic, like you don't have to gender the training. So if a man wants to learn on cheese making, also they should be welcomed. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dina. And we'll have to wrap things up there. I'd like you all to join me in thanking Dina, Gildas and Mastewal for their presentations and participation on the panel.